Chapter 1. The Call in the Night. October in Montana was always cold and gloomy, especially at night. The wind howled through the pine forest like the sighs of forgotten souls, and the lake was cloaked in a dense fog, as if trying to hide something beneath its surface. Lieutenant Elliot Graves was on night shift at the Flathead County Police Station. It was a quiet evening like any other, until the emergency phone rang right as the clock struck 2:00 a.m. Lieutenant Graves speaking. On the other end was a trembling voice, so faint that Elliot had to press the receiver tightly against his ear to make it out. "Sir, my mom and Dad were pulled into the lake. Something's down there. It's looking at me." A long pause followed. Elliot was about to ask more when the line went dead. The prolonged tone echoed in the dispatch room, as cold as the air outside. Without hesitation, Elliot accessed the emergency call locator system and traced the signal. A desolate area near Lake No. 13. The thing was, no one called it by that official name. To the locals, it was known as the Eternal Lake, a place they believed no soul could ever escape from once fallen in. Without a second thought, Elliot threw on another coat, checked his gun and flashlight, and drove off into the night. He had no idea this journey would change his life forever. The police truck turned onto a dirt path leading into the woods. The deeper he drove, the thicker the trees grew, and the darker the surroundings became. The headlights barely illuminated a few feet ahead. The GPS lost signal a kilometer before the lake. Elliot pressed on by instinct, a gnawing unease building inside him. Upon arrival, he found an old RV camper parked by the lake. Its door was wide open. The interior lights flickered. On the ground, small muddy footprints led from the vehicle to the water's edge, then stopped. No sounds, no birds, no insects. Only a faint fizzing noise, like bubbles rising from the center of the lake. Elliot shined his flashlight toward the shoreline. No one, no bodies, no signs of a struggle. But a creeping sense of being watched crawled over his skin. He called out loudly, "Police! Is anyone there?" Silence. Only echoes returning from the wall of trees. He checked inside the RV. A few bags, clothes, and personal belongings of a family of 3. Driver's licenses and IDs showed they were from Oregon. No blood, no sign of forced entry. Everything was neatly arranged, except for a torn children's book lying face down on the floor. He picked it up and flipped it open. The last page had been ripped down the middle, and something was scrawled in red ink. "Don't let it see your fear." Elliot blinked. The ink was still wet, as if it had been written less than an hour ago. Suddenly, from the darkness of the lake, a child's laughter echoed. Soft, thin, distant, yet far too clear in this deathly silence. He turned, shining his light toward the sound. Nothing. Then the flashlight flickered once, and in that split second of flashing light, a pale face with hollow black eyes surfaced in the center of the lake, only 20 meters away. Elliot shouted, stumbling back and nearly falling. But when the light steadied, the lake was empty again, just drifting mist and ripples fading away. He drew his gun. His heart pounded. The cold outside no longer mattered. He was frozen from within. At that moment, his phone rang. A caller with no number. He hesitated, then answered. A voice, no louder than a breath, whispered, "It's standing behind you." Elliot spun around. No one. But in the mud, his own footprints had been overlapped by smaller ones, slowly heading toward the lake. Chapter 2. Beneath the lake. Elliot stepped back slowly, his eyes fixed on the water's edge. His boots sank into the damp earth, and he could feel the mud clinging to his ankles. He raised his gun and aimed the flashlight into the darkness ahead, hoping it would give him an answer. But there was nothing. Only his own breath, shallow, heavy, echoed through the fog, a haunting reminder that he was still alive. Yet deep down, Elliot knew something had awakened. He returned to the RV and shut the door tightly. His eyes locked on the small front window, gun resting on his lap, flashlight still on. The night dragged on like a nightmare without end. And in one fleeting moment, just as his eyes began to close, a pale shape glided past the window. Fast, like a shadow drifting through water. Elliot jolted upright and rushed outside. But there was no one there. The lake was still, eerily so. Not even a ripple. By morning, a rescue team was deployed. Elliot recounted what had happened, but the looks they gave him hovered between belief and doubt. They began diving operations. 3 professional divers, fully equipped, all experienced in hundreds of underwater missions. The first dive revealed nothing but old debris. On the second dive, one of the divers stayed under longer than expected. When he resurfaced, he was trembling, his face pale, and he absolutely refused to go back in. It wasn't a gator, not a snake. That thing, it wasn't an animal at all, he stammered. They recovered a single child's shoe, floating near the area by the RV. Inside was a small piece of paper, carefully folded. Elliot opened it and read the crude handwriting. Emily, 7 years old. If someone finds this, please save my parents. It's keeping them underwater. Don't let anyone else come here. Lake No. 13 was immediately sealed off. But that night, a group of local hunters snuck in to find out the truth. By morning, townsfolk discovered their truck abandoned at the trailhead. The doors were wide open, lights still on. No one inside. On the windshield, a message had been written with a finger. It's hungry. The police began to suspect Elliot. Some at the station believed he had imagined everything. But then, dashcam footage from Elliot's truck was recovered. The video was grainy, heavily distorted. But in the final frame, something could be seen emerging from the center of the lake. A figure over 3 meters tall, humanoid in shape, but with grayish-green, lifeless, fish-like skin, hollow black eyes, and a lipless mouth opened at an unnatural angle. The footage was leaked briefly before being confiscated by federal authorities within 24 hours. A week later, Elliot received a parcel with no return address. Inside was an old, tattered notebook and a small note. If you want the truth about this lake, find the woman who drowned and came back to life. Willard Asylum, Wyoming. Her name is Lila. Chapter 3. Erased History. Elliot held the tattered notebook in his hands, his fingers brushing over the cracked, yellowed leather cover. The first page bore scrawled handwriting. Journal of Dr. Samuel Weir, Department of Psychiatry, Columbia University, 1932. The doctor's name meant nothing specific to Elliot, but a strange sense of dread crept into his mind as he began reading the opening lines. The notebook read like a confession. No, more like a forbidden record, never meant to be shared. Dr. Weir had studied cases of revival after clinical death and was summoned to a small town near Lake No. 13 when a 19-year-old girl named Lila Kavanaugh suddenly came back to life after drowning for 3 days. What haunted him was that, after she revived, she was no longer herself. Excerpts from the journal. April 18, 1932. Miss Lila opened her eyes in the middle of the night. She didn't blink. No response to light or sound. But her lips moved, not in human speech, more like the wind whistling through stone cracks. April 20th. She began drawing. Spirals, strange symbols. I saw them in my dreams. Voices beneath the water, calling to me. Reading this made Elliot's blood run cold. He turned to the final pages, but the rest of the journal had been torn, muddied, and soaked beyond recognition. However, tucked into the back cover was a small, hand-drawn map with a red mark near the lake and a note. Sealed zone, do not dig. The next morning, Elliot set out for Wyoming. He drove for 10 hours with only one name repeating in his mind, Lila. If she was still alive, after everything, she was the last living witness to whatever lurked beneath Lake No. 13. Willard Psychiatric Hospital stood isolated on a plateau, surrounded by dry, barren grasslands. The nurses were unfriendly, and even less welcoming to strangers asking about former patients. After several calls and negotiations, Elliot was granted a meeting with Lila, but under strict conditions. Behind glass only, no physical contact, no electronic devices. Lila Kavanaugh was now nearly 110 years old. But as Elliot sat before the reinforced glass, he froze. The woman on the other side didn't look like someone who had passed a century. Her skin was taut, waxy white, long silver hair draped over her shoulders, and her eyes, empty black voids like doorways with no bottom. She spoke first. "You've seen it, haven't you?" Elliot nodded, heart tightening. "It's still hungry. It never stops being hungry. Every soul it drags down becomes a part of its body. But if you're here, it means the seal is weakening." Elliot pressed forward. "Who are you? What is that thing? Where did it come from?" Lila smiled. The sound of her laugh was dry, brittle, like it cracked out from deep inside a skull. "It doesn't come from here. It's not a demon, not a ghost. It is older than anything. Long ago, the natives called it the eternal beneath the stone, a nameless god of death. We buried it under the lake. We sacrificed, one child each generation, until the world forgot. But someone woke it." Elliot shivered. "What about the family in Oregon? What did they do wrong?" Lila lowered her head, her voice barely a whisper from beyond. "They swam where no one was allowed. They touched the stone door. They saw the symbols, and they brought it back." She looked up, her eyes suddenly gleaming. "If you don't stop it, it will spread. Not just the lake, not just the town, the entire world." She placed a trembling hand against the glass. "You must find the complete map." It was torn into 3 pieces. The second is in the old church in the town of Amity. The final piece, I dare not say. If you find them all, you may be able to seal it. But if you open it wrong... She laughed again. Blood trickled from the corners of her eyes. "It will get out." Elliot left the hospital with a heavy heart. He knew there was no turning back now, no restful sleep. In his pocket was a torn map, the name of a town, Amity, and far too many unanswered questions. He didn't know that in her isolation ward, Lila sat silently, gazing out the window. Bloody tears continued to fall. On the wall behind her, she traced a symbol with her finger. A spiral circle, surrounded by 8 small eyes, and a wide, gaping mouth in the center. Chapter 4. Lila, the Survivor Child. July 6th. Hollow Creek Town, St. Miriam's Special Care Center. Lieutenant Elliot Graves pulled his car to a stop in front of the old gray brick building. The sign was faded. Moss covered the lower walls, but inside, a dim light still flickered, like the final breath of something refusing to die. He stepped into the reception area. "I need to see Lila Marrow." The nurse on duty gave him a cautious look, but after verifying his identity, she led him through 2 layers of security doors and down a long hallway heavy with the scent of disinfectant and peeling paint. Room 107. The door opened, and Graves stepped inside. Under the soft yellow light, a woman in her early 30s, small in stature with messy hair, sat curled up in the corner. In her arms was a frayed fabric doll. "Lila?" Graves asked softly. The woman didn't respond. Her gaze was fixed on the wall, as if another world was unfolding there, unmoving. After a long moment, she whispered, as if reciting something etched deep into her subconscious. It called each of them by name, but I didn't answer. Graves took a seat across from her, carefully opening his notebook. "Do you remember what happened at Deep Lake, Lila?" She remained silent for a long time, then slowly turned her head. Her eyes were clouded, but somewhere within them flickered something, like dying embers of an old fire. "People say that place is haunted, but it's not ghosts. It's a well that feeds on memories. Anyone who gets close is slowly swallowed. First, they laugh, then they cry. Then they forget who they are." Graves felt a chill crawl down his spine. He shifted slightly, asking, "You were the only one who survived the 2001 incident. Do you remember anything else?" Lila clutched the doll tighter. "We were camping by the lake. Around midnight, I heard someone calling my name. From underwater. Not loud, but just loud enough. Inside my head." Graves felt his heartbeat slow. "What did you see down there?" Lila slowly raised a hand to her forehead, tracing an imaginary circle.
"There was an eye, a huge one. It opened at the lake's bottom. I saw it, and it saw me. I ran, but the others, they stood still, like they were hearing music. Then they walked out of the water, not human, not spirits, no faces, just hands and whispers." After a long pause, Lila added softly, almost to herself, "I jumped into the fire, set the camp on fire on purpose, just so the light would push it back." Graves nodded slowly. He had read the report. The campsite near the lake had burned, and only Lila was found unconscious on the edge of the forest, over 2 miles from the scene. "Lila, why did you survive?" She leaned closer. For the first time, her eyes locked onto his. "Because I remembered my true name." Graves frowned. "True name? That thing can't take someone who knows exactly who they are. But once you forget, it writes a new name for you. On the list of 13. Graves looked down at his notes. "That list. Have you seen it before?" Lila slowly shook her head. Then, as if recalling something, she suddenly whispered, "But someone holds it. A man in a cloak. Face burned. He appears near the lake. They call him the Gatekeeper." On the drive back, Graves opened the 2001 case file again, pausing at a redacted line. Victims, 12 teenagers. Only one survivor, Lila Marrow. Conclusion: group hallucination caused by fungal poisoning. Case closed per special request from Federal Security Office. He activated his recorder and repeated Lila's words. "If you forget your true name, it will give you a new one." When he returned to the motel, Graves immediately sensed something was off. Everything seemed untouched, except the bathroom mirror. On the mirror's surface, a small handprint had been left in something dark, like dried blood. In the center, a message written with a fingertip. "Elliot Graves, the 12th." Graves stepped back. The lights flickered. Wind howled through the door crack. And from far off, deep within the lake, came a whisper calling his name. Chapter 5. The Ancient Journal. A Signal from the Past. July 8th, White Pine Town Library. Sealed archives. Graves stood in the low-ceilinged room, the smell of mildew and decaying paper seeping into every corner. In front of him sat an old file box marked Archaeological Project, Solace, 1899. The elderly librarian who had just unlocked the steel padlock leaned in and whispered, "That thing doesn't belong here. But if you really want to read it, remember this. Some things are meant to stay buried." Graves nodded, pulled the box toward him, and lifted the lid. Inside,
Among faded maps and hand-drawn sketches lay a brown leather-bound journal fastened with a brass clasp, resting as if it were a living thing in hibernation. First page. Elegant handwriting, the title in Latin. Liber Mortalis, Notes on the One Beneath the Mud. Author, Professor A. Elwood, Kingsmore University, year 1899. September. We arrived at the site known as the Solace Basin, a region long avoided by the local tribes. They speak of an eye that never closes, buried beneath the deepest layers of mud. I didn't believe it, until it began to appear in my dreams. October. When our team dug into the 12th layer of soil, we uncovered a circular stone formation, etched with symbols no one recognized. One resembled an eye. Not a symbol, but a living structure. When I touched it, the blood on my fingertip evaporated. Days later, my colleague Marcus vanished. But several nights after, we heard his laughter, coming from the woods. Graves flipped through the pages. The entries grew increasingly erratic, the handwriting trembling. One torn page remained, with only a final warning at the bottom. If you're reading this, seal Lake Solace forever. Never try to speak its true name. That name is the key that opens the door. What lies beneath doesn't just consume flesh. It devours memory, identity, and history. Final page. A crude drawing depicting a massive creature with no discernible head, only dozens of elongated tentacle-like arms coiled around stone pillars etched with unknown symbols. At its center was a single horizontal eye, pitch black like a bottomless pit. Beneath the drawing, written in faded, smeared blood, "The first to awaken shall be the one to bury us all." Graves closed the journal, heart pounding. He quietly placed his recorder on the table and whispered to himself, "Memory, identity, history. 13 people saw it. Was Lila the 13th? That night, Graves couldn't sleep. He searched online for Professor A. Elwood. No results, no university records, no academic citations. It was as if the man had never existed. Except on a hidden archival site created by a group of independent archaeologists. In the section titled, Missing Members of the Solace Expedition, 1899, a faint entry read, Professor Abraham Elwood, last known person to witness the entity beneath the lake before the entire team disappeared. The journal was never officially published. At that very moment, Graves received an anonymous email. Attached was a single image, the same black eye from the journal drawing. But this time, etched within the pupil was a name, E. Graves. And beneath it, a single line of text. You've read it. Now it knows you. Chapter 6. Blood Moon Night. First encounter with the creature. July 13th. Blood Moon. The Deep Lake region. Sealed off since 1972. Lieutenant Elliot Graves stood in the clearing where Lake Solace once lay, now nothing more than a hollow basin, its dark water glistening like a subterranean vein of bleeding earth. Above him, the blood-red moon hung in the sky. No wind stirred, no rustle in the trees. Time itself seemed frozen. Before leaving town, Graves had received a single message from an unknown number. Tonight, it wakes. Bring blood, bring name. No sender. But when he arrived, Graves saw that someone had already arranged a small circle of stones, exactly where the journal had described. He stepped into the circle. His watch stopped ticking at 0013. The first sound was cracking. From beneath the earth came a deep groaning noise, like the snapping of colossal bones. The ground near the lake bulged upward, revealing a jet-black stone pillar carved with symbols unlike any language Graves had ever seen. Then from the water, something began to move. Graves stepped back, hand clutching his gun. But what emerged resembled no known creature. First came the tendrils, like tree roots rising against gravity, slick with metallic-sheened, mucus-like skin. Next, a massive torso the size of a freight container, textured like living limestone, rose from the water. No head, no face. Only a single yawning socket like a giant breathing eye. The stench hit him, rot and rusted iron. He staggered, but then he heard the whispering, not with his ears, but in his memories. Elliot Graves, son of Timothy Graves. Your father saw me once but never spoke of it. You have read my name. You have seen my eye. Now you must choose. Keep the secret, or open the door. Graves screamed and fired. The bullet struck the creature's skin and vanished, as if swallowed by a rift in space. No reaction, no pain, only laughter in his mind. He collapsed to his knees, ears ringing. Darkness enveloped him. The entire world seemed to be drawn into that gaping black eye before him. Memories surged. He saw his father, Timothy Graves, standing in the same stone circle under the same blood moon. He saw robed figures lining the lakeside, blood dripping from their hands into the water. He saw a child placed at the center of the circle, screaming as the stone beneath cracked open. A ritual, a pact, a blood-bound oath. 13 were given to keep it asleep. The 14th awakens it, and only the one who remembers its true name can stop it. Graves snapped back to consciousness. The creature was sinking back into the water. On the ground beneath him, a blood-marked sigil had appeared, a horizontal eye, identical to the final symbol in the ancient journal. And in his hand, he had no idea how it got there, was a torn piece of aged leather. Etched into it, E. Graves, the 14th Awakener. The blood moon began to fade. The creature retreated. But Graves knew. Next time it won't wake just to watch. It will wake to feed. Chapter 7. The Journalist in the Dark. July 16th. Seattle, Washington. Tracy Ward, 31, a former investigative reporter for The Whisper, now lived in seclusion in a cramped apartment in the southern part of the city. She was the only person still in possession of a leaked manuscript from the Federal Research Institute in 2008. It detailed a basal entity phenomenon beneath Lake Solace, an article that all media platforms were forced to remove within just 12 hours. In 2009, Tracy had traveled to Montana. That trip cost her the life of her colleague, Brandon Cole, who vanished during a single night of camping near the lake. His body was never found. That night, in a room lit only by the dull yellow of a desk lamp and the glow of her computer screen, Tracy received an anonymous email. Subject: Graves has entered the circle. The creature has seen him. Attachment: a blurry infrared image, Graves standing in the center of the stone circle beside a blood sigil. Tracy froze. She was no longer a journalist. But this story wasn't done with her. The next morning, Tracy returned to her old newspaper office. The door was locked from the inside. She knew someone was still secretly operating within. She was right. The third-floor editorial desk was secured with the old passcode, Lack Evil Gate, a cipher only known to members of the original Lake 13 investigation team. Inside, she found a copy of a tampered satellite map of Montana. The area around Lake Solace had been deliberately blurred out in a perfect circle. Alongside the map was a list. 14 names, all of whom had been present at the lakeside over the years. Graves was the final name. On the night of July 17th, Tracy replayed a voice recording, Cole's final message before he vanished. It doesn't make sound, but when you look at it, you feel like you're dreaming. We shouldn't be here, Tracy. Something, or someone, is rising out of time. Then came a faint tapping. 13 times. Later that evening, while checking the hallway security camera, Tracy saw a man in a black cloak standing at her door. He didn't move. He didn't knock. He just watched. But when she checked the recorded footage, the figure wasn't there. He only appeared during manual playback. Tracy panicked. She decided to flee Seattle and follow Graves's trail. Before leaving, she placed a sealed envelope in the safe at her motel, addressed to another newsroom. "Open only if I go missing." Inside was a copy of a journal excerpt from 1902, written in trembling handwriting. "The thing below does not need language. It needs memory. And memory only lives when someone retells it." July 18th, Tracy drove across state lines to Oregon. But every night, in her rearview mirror, she saw a gray pickup truck following her. Never too close, never too far. At a gas station around 1 a.m., she received a text message. "Stop writing. The last journalist disappeared on the 13th. The night of the 14th is near." Graves and Tracy had never met, but both were now pulled into the same spiral, where law, science, and memory itself were warped. And as they drew closer to Lake 14, a place no one had ever returned from, they didn't know. Someone else was waiting. And that person had once opened the door and survived. Chapter 8. Lake 14. The Discovery. July 19th. Bridger Teton Mountains, Wyoming. Graves had followed the final coordinates written in Reverend Caleb Moore's old journal, a single faded line in smeared brown ink. "This thing is not bound to one place. We once believed it was only Solace, but we were wrong. 13 is the key. 14 is the door." Using a low-frequency LIFAR imaging technique, a small research team from Colorado State University had once recorded a strange signal emanating from the depths of a small lake called Leech Hollow, located about 17 kilometers outside the town of Dubois, Wyoming. The report was retracted within 72 hours, and the survey team vanished from all academic records. With indirect help from Tracy Ward, Graves identified this lake as the true Lake 14. July 20th, 3:12 a.m., Graves arrived. There was no official trail leading to Leech Hollow. He hiked 2 hours through biting winds that cut through his coat like blades. The lake emerged like a black mirrored wound, coated in thick silt, reflecting only a sky full of gray clouds. At the shore stood a half-collapsed, semicircular stone archway, etched with symbols identical to those seen at the stone circle in Lake Solace. At the lake's center, the water did not ripple. No waves, no insects. It was as though sound itself had been drained from the air. Graves recorded the area, noting every detail, until he uncovered an overturned stone slab carved in ancient Latin. "Portae non fiunt, portae recordantur." Doors are not made, doors are remembered. As he knelt, a faint cracking sound echoed beneath his feet, like glass breaking. The ground subtly gave way. A black liquid seeped from the fracture. Then came a deep, choked roar from within the lake's depths, so low it felt more sensed than heard. Graves stepped back and drew his gun. But guns don't work on things that don't exist on the map of life. At the same moment, Seattle. Tracy received a text from an unknown number. "Graves has entered Leech Hollow. You are out of time. The 14th night will choose blood." She got in her car. Her GPS lit up on its own, revealing a destination: Wyoming, Nameless Lake. July 21st. Graves set up camp near the lake. That night, he discovered 14 small stone pillars buried in the earth around the lake, only their tops exposed. Each was carved with the name of an American town that had been erased from history. One was San Solis, another, Elkhart, Indiana, a town that vanished during an unexplained forest fire in 1926. Graves sent all the data to Tracy, but minutes later, his transmitter went dark. When he returned to his tent, he saw a muddy handprint drawn across the canvas. with 13 fingers. In his final journal entry, Graves wrote, "It seems Leech Hollow is not just a replica. It's the branching nexus of all lake gates. Lake 13 was merely the first to open, not the only one." Today is July 21st, exactly 121 years since San Solis. 11 times 11, a symmetrical construct. They're waiting for someone with enough memory to become the key. Tracy finally reached the Bridger Teton Forest. That night, she saw Graves walk silently into the lake and disappear beneath the pitch-black surface. No scream, no trace. Only one thing remained. The stone slab now bore a new inscription, one that hadn't been there before. 14 has been remembered. One more must recall. Chapter 9. The Gatekeeper. July 22nd. Bridger Teton Forest, Wyoming. Tracy stood in silence before an old wooden cabin hidden beneath the canopy of ancient trees. No sign, no light. Only a single rough wooden door with a word carved deep into its surface. Custos Porte, the Gatekeeper. Throughout her journey, Tracy had heard strange tales of a mysterious figure known only as the Gatekeeper. The one being who could lock or open the gateways leading to the deep, cursed lakes. Rumors said he had lived for centuries, never aging, and appeared whenever a lake's curse was reawakened. The wooden door creaked as Tracy pushed it gently open. Inside was a small, dim room, lit faintly by the glow of an oil lamp. An old man sat at a worn wooden table, tall and gaunt, with snow-white hair and eyes that seemed to hold the depth of time itself. He spoke in a low, hoarse voice. "You didn't come out of curiosity. You came for the truth. But truth is often the heaviest burden." Tracy laid out the evidence Graves had sent, maps, photos, journal entries. The old man took them, gazed deeply into Tracy's eyes, and said, "These deep lakes are not just water and shadow. They are doors between our world and another, a place where ancient beings dwell. That entity, call it the Shadow, has been imprisoned for millennia. The curse began when humans trespassed into its realm, when a lake gate was opened. That opening forms an invisible void, allowing the shadow to slowly seep through. And every time a gate opens, someone is chosen to become the eye of the darkness, the next gatekeeper, the one who must hold the key to lock it away or open it again." Tracy asked, "So who is the current gatekeeper?" "And Graves." The man frowned. "Graves. He crossed the threshold, but he does not yet understand his role. As for me, I have kept the balance. But I cannot stay forever. A new one must rise." He pulled out a small wooden box. Inside was a silver bracelet engraved with ancient symbols. "This bracelet is the mark of the gatekeeper. If you accept it, you will bear the burden, not just of the deep lakes, but of the being that waits for freedom." Tracy stared at the bracelet. A chilling sensation crawled down her spine. She knew the path ahead offered no easy escape. Outside the cabin, wind howled through the stone pillars surrounding the lake like distant, restless sighs. A voice echoed from the shadows. "The deep lake will open, and only one can seal it again. That one is the gatekeeper, or the final prey." Chapter 10. Don't Say Its Name. July 23rd. By the shore of Deep Lake. 13. San Solis. Tracy stood at the edge of the lake, wearing the silver talisman given to her by the gatekeeper. A cold wind swept past, carrying the scent of damp earth and mist rising from the surface like a veil of ghostly fog. In her mind echoed the warning of the mysterious man. "Don't say its name. Don't look into the darkness. If you do, it will find you." She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, then opened them to stare into the pitch-black water. The surface began to ripple and rise, undulating like an invisible creature awakening. A low murmuring spread, not the sound of wind, but the whisper of countless ancient curses. Olivia, Elliot, Graves, and now, me, Tracy whispered, recalling the deadly path they had all walked. She felt the layered memories of those who had been consumed by the lake, souls trapped between two worlds. Suddenly, the lake erupted into a violent wave. A massive shape emerged, vague, swirling like a vortex of shadow. Two blazing red eyes flared open, glowing like embers in the night. The creature let out a guttural roar, echoing through the forest like a beast from forgotten nightmares. Tracy did not step back. She pulled off the talisman and raised it like a shield. "I am the gatekeeper," she said firmly, her voice steady with resolve. "This deep lake will not open again until I choose to keep the key." The beast stopped growling. Its breath sounded like waves crashing against stone. Slowly it turned and sank back into the depths, leaving only gentle ripples behind. Tracy knew she had made an invisible pact, a vow between shadow and light, with imprisoned souls and ancient beings beyond human comprehension. The gate between worlds would close, but peace would never truly return. Beside the lake, a stone tablet shimmered into view. On it, faint glowing words carved into the surface. The gatekeeper must never be named. The gatekeeper is the darkness between the light and the void. Tracy turned and walked away, her footsteps merging with the whispering wind. Tracy walked away from the lake, each step burdened with a responsibility she had never imagined. But deep within the shadows of the ancient forest, another pair of eyes silently watched her. Somewhere far away, deep inside the dark chamber of a secret research facility, a computer screen flickered with strange data. A voice echoed through the intercom. "We can't let this continue. Deep Lake 13 is not the only case." A digital map appeared, dotted with blinking lights. Dozens of mysterious deep lakes scattered across North America, each showing signs of abnormal activity. And beyond that, another force was silently collecting the remaining fragments of memory, gathering silver talismans like the one Tracy now carried. Tracy, now the new gatekeeper, would have to do more than guard a single lake. She was about to face a far greater battle between the world of mankind and the ancient darkness slowly awakening.